Hello, romance lovers. Today I have a story for you called How to Make a Kind Savior an Emperor. Don't forget to support this video with a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new interesting stories. Thank you for watching. In the courtroom stood a girl who denied the charges of murdering her husband. The very room in which she was located resembled a stage created to prove her crime. Nobody believed Inez's words. A man in the hall shouted that the girl promised to sort things out with her husband and then meet him himself. Another person said that the accused was unhappy with her husband. The third pointed out the presence of a small mole on the girl's thigh. He asked if that was enough to prove his connection with Inez. The men assured everyone that the accused was a real harlot. A witness stated that Inez had bought butter from his shop that day. Another woman saw the accused and her husband going up the hill. Another witness saw her going down alone. Witnesses said she was a criminal. The girl didn't understand why everyone was lying like that. She didn't kill Joseph. The accused told the judge that she would never do that. The arbitrator is convinced that Inez not only burned her husband, but also showed a vicious character by denying the crime. As a result, the Holy Court, under the auspices of the goddess of water Hecrasia, sentenced the unfortunate woman to 30 years in prison in Romfi ELD. From all sides, dirty, unflattering insults flew at the girl from the participants of the ongoing trial. People mocked the woman who, according to them, had tormented her own husband in order to get involved with another. The public accused Inez of doing this and now pretending not to know anything. After that, the girl ended up in Romfield, where every day seemed like hell. She ate food that was thrown to the dogs. Her body was aching and languishing from the back-breaking hard labor in prison. Everyone there was trembling with fear in the face of absolute horror. And where the soul was dying, no longer able to feel anything good, Inez realized the need to cling to her life. The endless days of hell continued for 10 years. In the room, the jailer read in the newspaper about the amnesty from the new emperor who had ascended the throne of the state. A prison officer came to Inez's cell and read out the emperor's new order. She was being granted freedom, which she had no longer hoped for. How brightly the sun shone in the prisoner's eyes. She was given a letter from a woman who called herself her servant. She thanked the jailer named Gomer for his care and left. Inez was pleased that the maid Susan had not forgotten her. She wrote about her father's suicide, the death of her beloved mistress's mother. As soon as the unfortunate lady escaped from hell, a new circle began. Inez jumped to her feet and ran forward, away from the prison. Heavy thoughts continued to haunt her. She fell and saw a beautiful river and mountains in front of her. This is where it could all end for the unfortunate woman. Mrs. Hecrasia says, "He who wants too much in this life ends up empty-handed." The girl, having gained freedom, entered the water and began to slowly sink into it. A sudden thought struck Inez. What is she doing right now? It is already extremely difficult for her to breathe. The girl endured 10 years in a terrible prison, only to die in vain as soon as she gets out. There is no more unfortunate fate. It was as if someone whispered the right words in her head. If someone extends their hand and offers to walk 10 steps, they must give them everything they have. The girl thought it was a goddess, but she rejected her request. Inez will not extend a hand, even if she is ready to give everything. Suddenly, Inez was grabbed by an unknown young man and pulled out of the water with a strong jerk. She woke up on the ground and realized that she was lying on green grass. There is nowhere to return. You are left alone. Heavy thoughts continued to haunt the girl. That same young man appeared before her, stretching out his hand to save her from this nightmare. She opened her eyes. In the new scene, Inez was lying on her bed. A tall young gentleman noticed her awakening. What nightmares were haunting her? Answer: everything was fine. Today there might be new troubles from the poor thing. The man was Carson von Raymond, Lord of Rizonia. He spoke to her and asked the guest to thank the servants who had taken care of the lady all week. He, the 8th prince of the empire and the savior of the young lady. Inez noted that her seizures had become less severe since she was rescued. At Romfield, the unfortunate woman had nightmares filled with darkness and gloom. But with Carson, the light dispelled the darkness with its appearance. The nobleman said that the attacks still bothered her, though they had weakened. But he wondered why the young girl had thrown herself into the water a week ago. A voice in her head was telling her to fall to the bottom of the lake. The girl thought that if a person like her were gone, then everything would finally be resolved. The Lord said that if the lady was in trouble, she could say nothing. He didn't want to torment her, he just blurted out too much. Inez replied, "There is nothing good in self-flagellation." She asked out loud, "Did everyone die because of her?" Parents, family, everyone connected to her. Carson is sure that it is better to move on. The girl asked how one could be so sure. The interlocutor's answer, "Because this is life and only the lady can decide what it will be like." Half of her life, Inez heard only death wishes addressed to her. The recent prison inmate's memory flashed with images of abuse in court and in prison. Surely her destiny is not to die. Does she really want to live? A few days later, the woman came to the cemetery. Her clothes and shoes were wet due to bad weather. She found the right grave, but even after 10 years, she could not cry. According to the inscription, Joseph Benoit is buried here. The gravestone has the years of life of this person and the words, "Here lies buried the insult that was in his eyes." The visitor wondered if this insult concerns her too. Everyone said that it was she who killed him. People kept saying this, and she even started to feel strange. Maybe the girl really did kill Joseph? But this is nonsense. Now she needs to get rid of such negative thoughts. The woman intends to commit suicide for herself. Sunny and friendly weather. A young man proposes to a wonderful lady. Joseph Benoit, of humble origin, offers her his hand and heart. It is a memory from such a distant past. Inez stood in the cemetery in the rain again. Her dead husband must forgive her, but she will never return. The girl's wish, to reject the past in order to live happily. She must return to the village before the weather gets worse. There was no one on the deserted street because of the rain. Only a man was walking ahead. She looked closely. Was it Joseph? But he was dead. They had met eyes. It was just a similar person and nothing more. Inez looked at the strange man who was standing facing her. "Joseph!" The girl turned to the man. "He is alive, but why did he appear only now? Why is the man smiling so strangely?" A frightening clatter of hooves was heard. The carriage was rushing very fast. The girl only looked back, but the next moment she was already lying on the ground. She was in so much pain that she could not move. She extended her hand to the man who approached her. The man gleefully regrets that the girl is not dead. He even pretended to be dead to send her to Romfield. Who knew he would be released so soon? The villain wonders if she is irritated by his good looks. The man asked Inez, "Is this unfair?" "Then let him take revenge if he can." The girl thought, "Isn't this all because of him? Why did he throw her into that hell? Didn't he really love her?" Inez didn't die then, but apparently it was her destiny to meet such an end. Carson's words came to mind. It was up to her to decide what her life would be like. The girl thought everything would be fine. She didn't want to die like that. Inez woke up screaming on her bed in her bedroom. She had been hit, almost to death, by that same carriage. Her mother was standing next to her. It had been just a dream, their first meeting in 10 years. Her mother asked where her daughter had gone in the rain. The girl apologized to her. The woman said that if her daughter understood everything perfectly well, then she should not cry. It did not seem that her body temperature was going down. The mother was going to get some water, but Ennis stopped her. The girl asks not to leave her alone in this room. The tired girl does not want to wake up. She stood up. Her ankle is fine, but when she started limping, it hurt even in her sleep. The girl saw herself in the mirror and fell. Ennis is impressed by her own reflection in the mirror. This is how she looked at the age of 20. The aristocrat touched herself. It felt realistic and in order. Everything points to one thing. Inez asked how old her mother was. The woman is 39 years old, but why did her daughter suddenly ask such a strange question? Based on what she heard, her daughter was 20 then. She could not believe that she had returned 12 years ago. This was not a dream, but absolute reality. A young man and a girl were sitting at a table in a summer garden. He asked if she was interested now. This is Joseph Benoit, a commoner who became a knight through his outstanding skills. Killed by his wife a year after his wedding, the poor guy. The rainy weather scene, with a man with strange eyes leaning over the lying inns. The man who betrayed her. Then again, the scene at the dinner table. The girl answered with a smile that she was interested. The guy asked the girl not to deceive him. She did not agree, as she was really waiting for his visit. The young man demanded to pay him some attention on her upcoming birthday. Inez remembered how she was proposed to on her 20th birthday. That's when the show began. But out loud, the girl promised to find time for the guy. He thanked her and was about to leave because he had personal matters. Inez's thoughts. Joseph will now stand up, take a few steps forward, turn around, and say some words. This man really said that he wanted to tell the lady about it on her birthday, but he still couldn't hold back. He confessed that he had risen to the rank of knight in the family of the Count. The girl remembered that time she had stood up and run to Joseph, feeling proud of him and forgetting about the difference in status. She declared that the guy was incredible. Now, sitting at the table, Inez limited herself to the following attack. Well done, and now let him leave quickly. He was definitely in a stupor. The lady would not even inquire into which family he was accepted? Lady. He became a knight, and whose... It does not matter. Joseph is now a knight in the famous family of Count Graymon of Razonia. They are not accustomed to being kind to commoners. How did he disappear? It is rather strange. The man asked what the girl was thinking about. Inez smiled. Nothing like that. The man was dissatisfied. Why was his interlocutor constantly trying to send him away? Answer. There were enough thoughts in her head about her upcoming birthday. Joseph gathered himself and left her. Everything around suddenly dimmed in the girl's eyes. Her eyes filled with blood. Burning with hatred for the guy, she was ready to kill him right now. But that would be stupid. The girl would break him, he would beg for death. At a reception with the monarch, the young man announced his intention to leave the imperial family. The king noted that his son was already an adult. Yes, the heir to the throne was 21 years old. The queen reminded the boy about the Landhill region. The emperor remembered and told his offspring that Landhill had no son to inherit the family. It would be good for him to take the place of the local lord. The autocrat also asked the prince to take his younger sister from Razonia. The heir thanked the royal couple. As he left, he thought that the Empress was still using the emperor like a dove, and the man who called himself a father didn't even know how his own children were doing. It's been 5 years since Louisiana was taken to Razonia. Although he was a fool too, thinking he knew Louis's little sister. The girl has nothing to remember about them. Inez sat at the table with her parents. She couldn't believe she had returned to the past. The woman asked her husband if he thought his daughter was a little strange. The answer, she was getting older. No need to worry. Inez agrees with her father's statement. She is the same as she was before. What is the point of these worries? Her father asked if his daughter was aware of the latest news. A new lord is coming to Landhill. Svendin was originally a small area on the outskirts of Razonia. After a flood that occurred 35 years ago due to heavy rainfall, the waterway that divided the area returned Svendin to Landhill. Razonia has continued to help the lands of the Empire all this time. They still trade with each other. But they belong to Landhill, so you have to be careful. This newly made lord is already the 8th prince. His name, Carson von Raymond. The girl is surprised. He received the title of lord? When will this man visit Svendin? The mother named the time. In just 3 days. Inez thought she had guessed. She might not meet him. Mother said that perhaps the lord would visit Razonia. Daughter wondered why he would do that. She was told to accompany the princess who lived in the castle to Landhill. Inez thought, is the lord involved in training the princess? A scene of conversation between Inez and a girl named Lena. The latter said that if she killed this girl, he would spare Jason. Is she okay? The distraught interlocutor continued. She killed a member of the imperial family. Inez didn't know why she suddenly decided to remember about Lena, the member of the imperial family she was talking about. Of course, you shouldn't trust everything she said. The girl wasn't in her right mind then. If Lena was telling the truth, that girl is Prince Carson's younger sister? A maid came to the young aristocrat and brought a letter from Sir Joseph. In it, he congratulated her on her 20th birthday and asked for a meeting today. Inez asked Susan if this guy was impudent. Maid, is there something strange about the letter? A man must have some manners. The lady did not understand how a knight from the common people called her by name. Not only did he set up the girl at that moment and send her to Romfield, but he also killed her as soon as she got out of that hell. The unfortunate woman remembered the evil laughter of the tormentor while she was dying. Inez would certainly kill him, and only then would she be able to live. Inez asked the maid to tell Joseph that she agreed to meet him. His death would not end everything. After all, forcing people to lie in court testimony, a commoner knight could not do that. There is definitely someone with the appropriate level of abilities behind him. If Inez avoids the man, he will use other methods of influence. The girl decided to find out who is behind all this. Inez remembers everything and is ready to give it back to him in full. The lack of resistance will lead to the fact that the young aristocrat will not be able to create an ideal world. And the last thing in her understanding, Carson by Raymond, the one who saved her from almost certain death and the only person who extended a helping hand and salvation in a life that was more like hell. Only the existence of this guy brings the girl closer to the ideal world. Inez was sitting at a table in the summer garden and was receiving Joseph again. He said that he missed the girl. She did the same and noticed that the rain that had been falling for a long time had just stopped. The guy reminded her about writing a letter to her. Inez asked him to recite a new message for her. Joseph wanted to convey his feelings of love with it. He began, "Does the lady remember the day they met?" Her golden hair shone like moonlight in the dark sky. The sight of her incredibly attractive green eyes took Joseph's breath away. From that moment on, the man loved her. Inez thought that at that moment she considered these words sincere, reading the letter that she eventually learned. The guy took a ring out of his pocket and knelt down, saying, "Beautiful and noble lady Inez Swendon, Joseph Benoa, of humble origin, offers her his hand and heart." She stood up and asked him to rise to his feet. The girl closed the lid of the box with the ring. The guy took it as a refusal. Today, Inez received a marriage proposal from another noble family. Joseph should not worry. She will refuse them. She expressed her point of view to her interlocutor. They need some time to think it over. The guy himself knows that his father won't give them permission. How long should he wait? Here the girl thought, who knows, until their parents accept their love. Inez said out loud, come to think of it, her new fiancé had gotten into a famous count's family. He had to do well in his service. Her dad would approve of their love match if Joseph received the title of baron. Joseph doesn't know how to earn such a title now if there is no war now. The girl is shocked. Will he allow her to live like a commoner's wife? If he intends to marry her, he must try hard. Inez thought, we need to put moral pressure on the guy. Someone is clearly controlling him. This someone made a person capable of receiving the title of Knight of the Count's family from a commoner who was worth nothing. Someone put pressure on the court then. Because of this, the girl was falsely accused of murdering her husband. When the girl's family was destroyed due to the false accusations, this certain villain received a good benefit. The lady asked why Joseph was silent and did not say anything. Inez continued, or were the words about his love for her a lie? Then she would not accept his proposal of marriage. Thought, this man could only be Earl Graham? Out loud, the guy said it was not so. Inez to Joseph. He loves her, doesn't he? The man's answer was positive. This time she will put off the conversation about marriage longer, but when receiving new proposals, the lady will have no choice. The young lady asked him to keep the ring if he didn't mind. When everything returned to normal, the ring would become a symbol of victory. The girl suggested ending the conversation for today. Moreover, the gardener would come soon. Remembering Joseph's words, Inez asked him an important question. He really considers himself a man of humble origin. She turned and left, while the groom stood and looked after the bride. Inez and Susan were walking down the street, and the mistress was hurrying the maid, because soon Prince Carson himself would arrive at the main square of Rizonia. They were walking through a certain passage, and the maid asked how the mistress knew about him. Inez replied with a smile that she had been there before, remembering her work in the prison. It was a long time ago. Susan admitted that she was surprised by Inez's desire to go see Prince Carson. She was given a sarcasm answer, because the fool who didn't want to know anyone except Joseph was interested in someone? Susan almost blushed and replied that she hadn't meant that. Inez thought the maid's surprise was understandable. 3 days ago, Joseph proposed to his beloved and hasn't contacted her since. What is he up to? Well, now she's more interested in seeing Carson. The girl couldn't remember his age, maybe 21? She wonders what the prince looks like now. Carson was wondering what he would take Louis with him. When he was 15, their mother died from a poison that accumulated in her body. The family knew what it was, but pretended not to know. The reality in which the prince had to keep silent about his mother's death constantly reminded him of his own helplessness. When the heir turned 17, Count Graham was taking Louis away at that moment. The prince asked, "Won't he stop? What kind of education?" The girl called her brother, but the count told the princess there is no time for that. She rushed to her brother. The man said he thought she was smart, like Carson. The girl managed to hide behind her brother, who demanded that the count stop behaving like that. He wouldn't leave him alone if he even laid a finger on little Louisiana. The count said he had no idea why the boy thought like that. It was Her Majesty the Empress, filled with parental love, who asked the man personally about the princess's education. Or did the prince say so because the count was a relative of the monarch? Carson demanded that he shut up. The interlocutor urged him not to use vulgar expressions. Graham asked the girl to go faster. Or does she want to go against the Empress? The count thought haughtily. How can such a brat hold anyone back? The sister approached her brother and he promised to take her away soon. The girl wants him to hurry. The prince promised to fulfill his plan. When Carson's younger sister was taken away, he began saving money to gain strength. The honestly earned money helped stabilize the boy's precarious situation. Those who had previously looked down on him bowed down to him. Over time, Carson already had a huge capital. At the age of 21, the prince was already the owner of power. The queen asked if he wanted to become Lord of Landhill. The guy noted that it was close to Rizonia. The young heir refuses a completely legitimate throne? I wonder, thought the queen. Well, she will inform the monarch himself about the guy's decision. The prince worked a lot before. He decided to leave the imperial palace. The prince rode with his servant on horseback through the wooded countryside. He was informed that he would soon arrive at Landhill. This was quite fast, considering that it had taken them 4 days to prepare for departure. The prince replied that such a period was not comparable to 4 years. Meanwhile, Inez continued walking with the maid to the square. The lady asked Susan if many people had come there for the prince. The housekeeper said that many, because he is the most famous among the princes. The guy has achieved a lot since his youth, and his handsome face contributed to his popularity. The prince's fame is no joke. The maid is sure that every girl in the kingdom should have his portrait. Inez is interested and asked to get her one. Susan does not understand what was said to her. She was told, of course, if other ladies have one. But she needs a portrait the size of a palm. The maid promised to look at the market if the mistress had such a wish. They saw a strange woman around the corner. Inez remembered Lena and her words about the murder of a member of the imperial family. Inez couldn't believe her eyes. The lady standing there was a little different from the crazy woman from Romfield, but it was definitely Lena. Next to the woman was a man in a hooded cloak. He assured for the last time. The maid asked the mistress to leave quickly. They left the strange place. The girl walked and did not understand what Lena was doing there and who was with her. The two women left faster and faster. Susan and her mistress were already standing in the crowd of people in the city square. Inez kept recalling Lena's words that she had killed a member of the imperial family in Rizonia. So, this murder would happen soon? If it's the princess of the imperial family, then it's probably Carson's younger sister. And since he's taking the girl to Landhill, Lena will kill the princess today. Someone needs to be told about this immediately. Inez's words now? She can't finally make up her mind. What to do if everything is in vain? Thoughts tormented the unfortunate girl without stopping. A lady passed by with an apology that touched her. The lady looked at this woman. Black hair, golden eyes, similar to Carson. Princess. The last one was being urged forward by the same woman. Could this girl be Prince Carson's sister? Inez broke through to them and caught up with the couple. The woman said loudly. The procession had already begun. They would not be able to come closer. The lady panicked. What should she do when Lena appeared? If she did not tell as soon as possible. Who was that on the other side? From that direction, a strange woman in a cloak with a hood on her head was riding a horse. One of the guards ran up to her with a weapon. If she did not leave, he threatened to use physical force. The lady suddenly rushed forward to the princess, Lena after all. The princess, confused, loudly called her brother in fear. Inez realized that there was nothing she could do to change the future, but she quickly rushed forward. She had to protect the unfortunate girl from death. Inez threw herself under the hooves and saved Louisiana. Asking if she was okay, the girl assured that everything was fine now. The military had already detained the attacker, who was screaming that she could not be stopped. The terrorist continued to scream that she would have killed the girl if it weren't for that creature. Inez and Louis were already standing on the ground and looking sadly at the crazy woman. The lady assured them once again that everything was fine. Inez asked the princess to go to the prince. Everything suddenly swam before her eyes. She realized that it would be dangerous if she lost consciousness in front of everyone. Although there was nothing terrible here, she helped Carson. Inez remembered how in her past life the prince had saved her. She would have died without knowing anything if it hadn't been for Carson. He who wants much ends up empty-handed. A memory of falling into the water and being saved. Lord Carson rode up to the bleeding Inez and asked what had happened to her. She said the word princess and fainted. Later, he walked down the long hall. It was as soon as he left the palace that it happened. Carson said, "If it weren't for that girl's help, Louis would have died." Then, seeing that scene on the square, the prince rushed forward but was stopped by unknown persons. What are they doing? The man demanded that they get out of the way. The armed men can't because they follow orders. Carson knew that the Empress wouldn't let him go easily, but she dared to touch little Louis. Then he noticed the two of them. He couldn't figure out who was next to his sister. Carson is sure they are seeing each other for the first time. His face is unfamiliar to him. The unfortunate woman looks as if she is going to fall. In the evening, the prince opened the door of the bedroom where the wounded Inez lay. Now she seems younger. Why did this girl sacrifice herself for Louis? The injured beauty opened her eyes. "Has she woken up?" he asked. The girl asked, "Prince Carson? Where is she?" The owner answered, "This is Lord Landhill's castle," and he added that the girl fainted, so she was urgently brought here. She thought she would die, and Carson saved the lady this time too. Isn't it a hallucination that appeared before she lost consciousness? Inez asked if the princess was okay. The man answered, "Yes, thanks to her savior." The girl had just arrived, but the victim was asleep. Okay, then it was time for her to go to the mansion. The prince said the girl had lost a lot of blood. He asked the lady not to get up from the sofa, or she might suddenly feel dizzy. The doctor promised that everything would be fine, but the girl should not overexert herself for a while. She looked at her ankle. According to the Lord, the ankle is clearly very sore now. If the lady rests for a couple of days, she can walk again without any problems. Inez felt awkward in this situation. She asked what was wrong with the woman on the horse. The aristocrat said that the identity of that person is still quite difficult to establish. She is currently in custody. She remembered Lena's words when she spoke about Lord Rizonia's promise. The customer is Lord Earl Graham. Inez realized that it would be to her and Carson's advantage if it turned out that Graham was behind the assassination attempt on a member of the imperial family. The girl absolutely could not miss such a chance. The girl asked about the possibility of meeting the woman. Carson didn't understand. Why did the interlocutor need this? The lady answered. She seemed familiar to her. To this, the Lord asked, maybe she knew the criminal? Inez must first look at her and then tell, the guy thought. He wants to meet the man who almost killed her. Something is suspicious about her. He promised to think about it. Near the exit, he said that he explained the situation to Viscount Swendon. Carson urged the girl to stay here until she was fully recovered. Inez was surprised. She was locked here just like Lena. The unfortunate girl watched the young man leave with a smile on her young face. A week had passed since those events. Lord was in his large office. The woman had still not confessed. While behind bars, she claimed that she had been drugged and therefore did not remember anything. The criminal said that she was not herself at that moment. And who attacked him? The prince's assistant came in and said that they examined the bodies of the attackers, but their identities were not established. Nothing comes easy these days, but the assistant was able to find out that Inez was in the bedroom. Swendon, the only daughter of Viscount Swendon and a completely ordinary girl. That's why her saving a man is amazing, and her indifference to pain. Mr. Carson remembered the poor girl's appearance. Was she really an ordinary young girl? The servant announced that Miss Swendon was asking to see him. He allowed the lady to enter his office. He looked at the papers with her name, Inez Swendon. Where did he get such a feeling of awkwardness? The door opened, and the girl who saved the princess came in wearing a beautiful dress. He looked at her bandaged leg. He thought that the poor thing still had a swollen leg. Carson thought it was strange. His guest's injury was minor. Wait, can she walk normally anymore? Oh, that discomfort of the body and soul living a separate life. The Lord invited the girl to sit down at the table and asked how her ankle was. The girl reassured him. Everything was absolutely fine with her. The aristocrat wondered if anything else was bothering her. The answer, no, thanks to him, everything was fine. The hospitable gentleman is glad to hear this. Inez asked if she could go home now since her health had improved. Yes, it seems she has recovered. The girl will keep quiet about Lena for now. Otherwise, she will not be able to return. Carson noted that before the guest left, he should thank her properly for what she had done. The man said thank you for saving his only younger sister. The case is not closed, which is why he is late with his thanks. The girl disagrees. She only did what she had to. The Empire undertakes to reward the man who saved a member of the imperial family. Inez was given a folder with papers and asked to choose what she needed most. Let her read slowly. The girl, in turn, said that she had already decided. She needed the right of inviolability. Carson was surprised by such words. Not lands or jewels, but the right of inviolability. He knew that this young lady was not simple. With a smile, the Lord asked what crime she would commit. He reminded that his guest already had noble origins. It was unlikely that the girl would take advantage of this privilege. There was no need to rush into such a decision. Inez said that this privilege would be enough for her. The Lord wonders what the reason is? The girl said out loud, thinking, what if she definitely kills a person? Her interlocutor is surprised. For him, this is an unexpected answer. He asked what she will do with her little hands. Inez said she didn't say she was actually going to do it. You just never know what the future will hold. Carson agrees. The future really is unpredictable, but the right of immunity does not give its owner complete immunity. The girl knows this very well. She does not simply not want to go to Romfield. Carson was wary. The lady is talking about the prison in Rizonia? Inez called this colony an unbearable place, adding that she had heard so. She should be promised that with the right of immunity, if she commits a crime, she will not be sent to Romfield for it. Carson asked his assistant Noy to prepare a special document that the girl needs so much. Remembering her family, Inez wants to tell Lord Landhill something. He gave his consent. Although the Swendon family was annexed to Landhill, they still work under Rizonia's leadership. The girl finds it necessary to sort this out. The master of the house therefore turns to the servant. Carson noted that Swendon had long been part of Landhill. Noy said that compared to the size of the territory, Rizonia's population was small. Their lord therefore often made exorbitant requests. The nobleman said that the families of his lands should not serve another. It will take some time as the matter requires the approval of the imperial family, but he agrees in advance. The Lord would do everything in his power to ensure that Rizonia stopped interfering in Svendon's affairs by the end of the year. Inez smiled sincerely and thanked the master of the house. She reminded him of that matter. Carson did not understand the interlocutor. The girl meant the woman in the dungeon. The aristocrat remembered the interlocutor's desire to meet her. He thought that these were empty words. Does she really know her? Carson asked if they even knew each other. Inez replied that she would tell him after the meeting. Okay, he would believe her. The gentleman asked Noy to go with the young lady. She immediately became worried. Inez said that the Lord was probably very busy. She did not want to disturb him, so she would go with another servant. Carson called her his benefactor and sent Noy with the guest. He showed the way to the lady. At the threshold, Carson stopped the young lady to ask a question. Had they met before? The servant thought. No comment. The lady smiled and said that they had not met. Noy came with the girl to the dungeon. They stood near the door with the guards. A moment later, the two of them entered the cell, where the prisoner was kneeling at the far wall. Inez called her, "Lena Marie." She turned around and moved towards them. She screamed that this was the woman who had disturbed her in the square and because of whom everything had gone to hell. Noy demanded that the guards tie up the villainess so that she would not move. They sat opposite each other. Inez said that if Lena continued to remain silent, she would be condemned, perhaps executed after being sent to Romfield. The prisoner said angrily, "And she thinks that everything is simple?" Inez asked if she thought the person behind the criminal would help her avoid trial. Why save her life if the plan failed? It would be more profitable for that person to kill Lena before her trial. Noy asked in shock, "Is everything okay with Inez?" She turned to him. "Everything is fine." But the servant demanded to finish here and go upstairs. The smiling girl suddenly remembered about the scarf in the room. She could ask Noy for a favor. He left. They were alone. Inez told the prisoner that she knew whose orders she was following. She was surprised. Probably Count Graham said that if she did as she was told, there would be no problems. Lena did not understand who was in front of her. Inez continued, "Let the prisoner think now. It seems that the Count will save her after the failure. Who knows what she will say later?" The criminal did not believe. "It cannot be." Inez added, "Jason will die soon. She doesn't know him, but she is sure he is important to Lena." The guest thought, because of his death, Lena went crazy. But Jason will surely die at the hands of the Count. Lena rose to her feet and fell to the ground screaming. Inez said that she had suddenly rushed at her with threats. The prisoner denied this. Noy ordered the woman to be lifted. She looked into the eyes of her interlocutor. "Jason will die." "Shut up." Inez said that Lena should be the one to keep quiet because she was about to tell about Romfield. First, they would tear out her fingernails and toenails. There would be no whole bones left. Then the day would come when she would be happy to eat what she had vomited up, no matter what people with faces unknown would do to her. Lena shouted at Inez to shut up. Inez thought of the prisoner as a madwoman. Who would have thought that she would one day hear something like that from the crazy Lena? The young aristocrat was not mistaken. When she returned at the age of 20, she went crazy with anger every day. Inez stood opposite the kneeling prisoner. She asked if she was afraid at the moment. The servant brought a handkerchief. The girl thanked him. Noy did not understand what he saw now. Inez asked the knight to seat Lena on a chair. He did so. The girl urged the villainess to come to her senses and figure out what situation she was in. If she was stubborn, everything she heard would become clear. Lena looked at her interlocutor in confusion. If she united with Prince Carson, told him the truth and prayed for mercy, she could save herself and her loved ones. Inez told Noy that she wanted to say it the way she wanted, and now she would go. The same Noy entered the Lord's office, not knowing how to tell everything. He announced his return to Lady Swendon's house. Elena Marie agreed to tell everything. Lord is surprised. Really, that woman? He persuaded her all week, and she did not open her mouth. How is the protection of public order pressing to take Lena? If she ends up with them, she will be within the reach of the Empress. She may be worried that who is behind this will be revealed. The Lord tried to persuade the woman for a long time. He was even thinking of handing her over to the security squad. As soon as the prisoner met Inez, she immediately opened her mouth. The man thought, how did she know everything? About Louis, Lena, how to solve everything? In the past, he would have written it all off to fate. The Lord asked the servant what the two ladies in the dungeon were talking about. The answer, nothing like that. About what they had already told the prisoner. But the guest also told her about Romfield, that she would end up there. Noy had repeatedly spoken to the criminal about this prison. Now she reacted more sharply than usual. Lord recalled Inez's words about the right of inviolability and Romfield. What did Romfield do to her? The prince asked. Noy watched as the prisoner spat on the young lady, and he simply watched what was happening. The servant fought back. The lady sent for a handkerchief, and when they were left alone, Lena changed. Carson rose from his seat. They went together to the dungeon. The Lord intended to meet Lena personally. Here, the servant added that the princess had escorted Lady Swendon to the carriage. The Lord was surprised to hear from the assistant. The prince thought about his sister, who never even left her room, but had taken the girl so far. The man asked if they had talked about anything. No, they greeted each other, hugged each other, and then parted. "What nonsense," said Carson. "It's not a lie," replied the servant. What a surprise. The Lord must first meet Lena. Soon they entered the criminal's dungeon. The prisoner was surprised by the prince's appearance. She rose to her feet and fervently promised to tell everything, if only the Lord would save Jason. The aristocrat was surprised by such a change in her mood. He had never seen such a thing. "Woman, this is her 3-year-old son. In case of rescue, she will testify," Carson asked. Was the attacker really telling the truth? The woman answered positively. The boy was seized by Earl Graham, so there was little time. The Lord knew it was someone from the Queen's entourage, but the Earl himself. The aristocrat thought he should be thanked, because thanks to this mistake, the Lord managed to grab the Empress by the tail. He promised Lena to find her beloved son. He asked the prisoner, "Does she know where the child is?" The woman does not know the boy's location. She guesses that her son is hidden somewhere. A question from the Lord. What does he look like? Lena described. Blue eyes and brown hair. A small scar under the left ear. Carson demanded that Noy pass on all the information he had received to the knights, who would secretly find out what was needed. The Lord asked Lena Marie a question. Does she know the girl she talked to today? Inez Swendon? The woman answered. They met for the first time today. The prince did not believe. Was she so sure of it? The woman said, they met for the first time in the square, but the girl already knew her, apparently. The thoughts of the Lord and his interlocutor were the same. He promised the prisoner to find her son soon. She could not believe it and thanked the man warmly. When the prince left, he asked Marie to forget the name of that guest. As the master and servant walked along the corridor of the prison cell, the former asked the latter to spread a rumor that Lena had set fire to the room in connection with her desire to commit suicide. But this position cannot be officially announced. Another order came from Carson. The public safety squad is to be told that the body cannot be released until the investigation is completed. Noy is also to find the female corpse. This lifeless female body must be burned so that no one will recognize it. 4 days later, the servant reported to the master that he had started the rumor they were discussing. A certain henchman of Graham began to behave suspiciously. Noy asked how the master would deal with Mariere now. For now, she would be hidden, but she wanted to kill a member of the imperial family, so in the end, this woman would suffer the punishment she deserved. For some reason, the Lord would ask Inez for permission. The master told the servant that he would put the matter aside and asked him to take Jason to Lena. The prince thought that the prisoner would testify in his favor since his son had been found. He fulfilled her request. Noy asked why Earl Graham was targeting Carson. The Lord did not know yet, but thought that according to the Queen's opinion, he was a threat to her. After all, the Earl was hiding behind the Empress in his evil deeds. Carson understood that he had little solid evidence to catch the Queen. She would not give up trying to kill the prince even later. For now, he had to wait and prepare perfectly as his crowned rival did. The gentleman told the servant that he would be somewhat busy in the future. The servant reminded him of the upcoming ball at the estate. He remembered there was a month left and many guests would arrive. That meant that Mrs. Eanes would be there too, a noble lady who rushes to save a man as if she has nothing to lose. He says that she is capable of killing a man with her fragile body. She changes the opinions of others in an instant. Prince Carson by Raymond asked Noy if he would send Miss Swendon a dress for the ball. Would it be a problem? The servant replied, "It is a suitable reward for a young girl for saving the life of a princess." The Lord did not understand. What reward? Noy asked, "Is that not why the master intends to send him?" The reward? Exactly, that's it. It would be good to add jewelry to the outfit, so a necklace must be added. The Lord muttered, "Green." The servant did not understand what his superior was saying. The Lord decided it would be a green reward, but not too dark. As he left, the servant thought his master was more sensitive than he seemed. Carson wondered why he suddenly started talking about the green shade. He doesn't know why himself, but when he remembers Inez, this color comes to mind. A month has passed since those events, The long-awaited day of the ball has arrived. Noy and his master were walking down the corridor of the great manor. A servant was reading from a sheet about Swendon's ban on meeting with Rosonia. He was being sent back to the bosom of Landhill. So answered the Empress in her own letter. Carson noted that from now on, Swendon would cooperate only with Landhill. The servant said that the issue of the current territorial affiliation was extremely difficult. How was it resolved so quickly? The gentleman said briefly, "It should be so." Noy asked if Carson had threatened the lady to resolve the issue quickly. "How is that possible?" The imperturbable host answered. He only reported on the gifts he had received. Their lady then sent them to the square. Carson thought that if he personally spoke for the murderers, the Empress would act for some time. That is why she approved the territorial dispute. In the future, the villainous queen will attack the Lord again, but the Lord will quickly and correctly prepare for this. Noy reminded about the gifts. The Lord asked, "Is this important now?" "First, we need to finish the greetings." They entered the hall with the guests. Inez entered with a young man. He said that the prince had become Lord of Landhill. He couldn't wait to see the future of these territories. The man looked at his companion and noticed that she didn't look very well. The girl explained that she was simply overexcited. She can't help but be nervous because Joseph will also be appearing at the ceremony. Benoa. In the letter, he wrote about attending the ball and waiting for a response to the proposal. Inez tore up the letter she had received. This was simply ridiculous. A commoner at a ball? There was only one way. The people in the hall were saying that Prince Carson was only Lord of Landhill, but he had arranged such a grand banquet. A certain aristocrat retorted, "The prince is the heir of the imperial family. He is obliged to announce himself so loudly." Count Raymond entered. People turned to him and found the ball impressive. The aristocrat replied, "He didn't see anything special. He came with his daughter, with whom he could dance, but later." Count Graham appeared, asking the Lord not to be so strict with him. The Count explained that he, instead of the prince, cared for Louis as if she were his own family. Carson thought angrily, who did this man care about? The Count answered the prince, "Aren't he and Her Highness the princess family?" "Lord," the Count said the word family so unusually. The interlocutor asked Graham how he treated his own relatives. He did not understand the question. The Lord reminded that the Count sent his sister to him with one maid. The Count remembered this fact. Carson's thoughts, as if hoping that trouble would happen. Previously, he would have kept silent since Louis was at Graham's, but now everything was different. The guests noticed the formation of an unpleasant atmosphere in the hall. Inez and her companion approached the Count. It was an honor for him to meet this man. The guy introduced himself, Andrew Swendon. The aristocrats exchanged pleasantries in front of the standing Earl of Graham. The Lord noted that he should have come to Swandon himself with thanks, but he was late. The man also said that a huge problem was being solved thanks to Inez, for which they were very grateful. The attractive lady was pleasantly shocked. She thanked the Lord for such valuable gifts. Did he really choose the dress and necklace for her himself? The Lord replied, "Yes, these are gifts for my benefactress." He could not trust them to others. The exchange of pleasantries continued between the aristocrats. The girl was pleased with the dress and jewelry, but the Lord was clearly very busy. And he knew that green suited the lady. Here, Count Graham hastened to intervene. The first to speak was the kind Lord. According to him, if everyone was gathered, it would be a good idea to talk about something important right now. The new statement shocked everyone. The Swendon family was completely subordinate to Landhill. The Lord stated that after checking, he found that Swendon, although he had moved to the jurisdiction of Landhill, they maintained ties with Rosonia. This family knows, but the redistribution was 35 years ago. Now it looks strange. The Count noticed that this was due to the change in landscape, and if politics were not involved, then everything was fine. And Swendon had helped Rosonia for generations. The prince asked, "How can the Count contradict the imperial family? He does not agree with such words. The matter should simply be approved by a special law." The Lord asked not to worry here. The Queen has already given the necessary go-ahead in this matter. Graham doubted what he heard. Carson advised the Earl standing nearby to send a letter to the palace right away if he did not trust the nobleman. Since this was a matter within the competence of the royal family, He was not sure that Graham would have any influence on him. Now he is the local lord and will definitely sort things out with everyone. The Swendon family now helps only Landhill. The lord turned to the guests. If they have nothing to say, let them have fun. He still has many people. In the office, Carson collapsed on the sofa, saying how tired he was. Noy noted with a smile that the host had not even greeted all the people at the ball. Prince, will this be the end of it? Servant. No, then the dancing begins. For the master, this is the worst part. He will miss it. Noy thinks it is difficult, so the master should check the list. The master took the list to study. The lord told the servant that he had been given a list of names of young girls. Noy suggests that he choose a spouse at the first banquet. Servant. It's not like that, but it's nice to know about dance partners. Carson refused. The servant is perplexed. The master does not want to marry? Lord. Noy said, this is not a choice of ladies for a wife, but he does not intend to simply dance. The subordinate asked him not to refuse. Noy specified that the list contained data on the daughters of all the noble families of Landhill, starting with the viscounts. The list included the status of the families, reputation, dowry size, appearance, and age of the young ladies. Carson noted matter-of-factly that Noy was indeed a competent assistant. He smiled and thanked him for such good praise. The lord's thoughts. He thought the servant was a shrewd fellow. The prince wants to rest alone, so he asks the servant to go out for a while. He hopes that the master will read the list. Carson thought it was awkward to play the role of a lord all day, but it was better than being a prince. The young aristocrat still read the list. A wedding. For a single lord, it was inevitable in the end. The lord noticed the absence of the name Inez in the document. Without noticing it, he went outside and saw a lady who looked like Inez. Carson by Raymond did not understand where she had gone alone at such a late hour. A guy unknown to the prince was following the lady. And who was this? The girl looked around. No one was there. Joseph approached her. Here they could talk calmly. Joseph smiled and noted that he was just following the current fashion. He thought about it when he first saw her at the ball. The guy hugged the one he seemed to love. She was so beautiful today. Joseph asked if the girl missed him. Then Inez pulled away and asked him not to touch her. What if someone else saw her? The man apologized for his own actions. Joseph really wanted to meet as soon as possible because there was good news. The interlocutor did not understand what he was talking about now. The guy received the title of baronet. He was honored personally by Earl Graham. What a blessing for him that the count had given him a title as the lady had once wanted. The girl thought that the man mentioned above had not only given Joseph the title of knight, but had also presented him with a very prestigious title. Inez asked if her friend was definitely a baron now. Yes, and after he was given the title, he would officially propose marriage to her. The guy was happy that the secret meetings were over and they would soon become official spouses. The lady was shocked to hear the word soon. With the new titles of the man, no one would be against this marriage. Maybe that terrible future would come much earlier? No, it won't happen. She needs to hurry with her plan. She said out loud to Joseph that they had not even received permission, so it was too early to talk about marriage. The lady asked the question, isn't it time for her interlocutor to go? A night guard should not leave his master. Joseph is slightly surprised. Should he leave already? Inez. Yes, he doesn't know how sensitive nobles are to such things, so he should hurry up. The slightly upset guy agreed and left first, saying goodbye to her. Inez glared at Joseph as he walked back into the house. Carson, watching the scene, thought he was watching a meeting of lovers. He thought that the lovers had different emotions. Inez was already walking down the hallway. She wondered what good would it do the Count to give Joseph the title of Baron. He hates the Swendon family and wants to destroy it. Or does he need something else? The girl tries to understand, but she still can't find an answer. The young aristocrat decided to take a break and collect her thoughts. She entered the room, but overheard a conversation between a red-haired girl and a young man. He asked, had the lady overindulged in alcoholic drinks? Inez thought it was Joseph's voice. A girl in the room, unknown to her yet, answered. He had come too late. She asked him to come over. The lady's thoughts, in a relationship with the Count's daughter, and she didn't know. The couple embraced. Inez was delighted. Now she had an excellent reason to decline Joseph's offer. The Count's daughter began to undress the guy, but he was indignant. Why had she drunk so much alcohol? The lady was angry at what she heard. She shouted. The prince and father had spoiled her mood, so let Joseph shut up and concentrate on the matter. Their lips met in a lustful kiss. Inez thought they would have an important conversation, not this. The girl realized that she had better leave now. Someone came up to her from behind and covered her mouth with a hand, but quickly let go. Inez turned around. The Lord was standing in front of her. He wanted to ask how he ended up here, but the prince gave a sign to be silent. The agitated Joseph asked his lady to stop. She noticed that he was speaking like a true knight. The guy reasonably noted that strangers could enter the room. The girl's words, "It will be fun then." The couple were sitting on the bed after making love. The earl's daughter said that her gentleman had just met Miss Swendon. He said, yes, he told her about the title. Now the Swendons will not be able to object to their marriage. The lady noticed that some complications had appeared. The interlocutor did not understand what she was getting at. They explained to him. Joseph had heard that the girl's family was no longer connected with Rasonia and was only helping Landhill. The girl said that Count Graham rushed to the imperial palace because of this. Joseph. And there won't be any problems with their plan? The answer of the Count's daughter. No, but we must hurry with the wedding on Inez. Joseph wondered if they would deal with the prince. Would everything go according to plan? Wouldn't he become a big problem for them? The girl thinks that Carson has a nose for money, and he is capable of ruining everything for them. Hidden Inez didn't understand why her friend's name was there. Joseph asked if they had time to relax. His friend replied that there was no need to worry. Landhill would soon unite with Rasonia. The Count's daughter advised her lover to think about the good times, to wait just a little bit, so that he could play with the cute girl to his heart's content. Joseph said, "Isn't that why he intends to die and wake up?" Listening to this, the Lord asked Miss Swendon to leave the room. They went into his study. The prince asked if the lady knew those two. The answer, she saw the lady for the first time, and the man next to her was her fiancé. Carson is perplexed. Is she all right? Yes, the girl is sure that he will be dealt with quickly. Good, but the Lord must tell her something. Lady Mariere confessed. Inez was excited at these words. Inez said that she had heard that the prisoner had recently died in a fire. The Lord reassured her. He had spread such a rumor on purpose, and Lena herself was with her son in the prince's mansion. The lady remembered the madwoman's words about her son, who would be spared, Jason. Inez remembered that this was the name of the offspring of the former prisoner. Carson explained that the boy had been taken hostage by the Count to shut Lena's mouth. The lady was glad that the child had been found and was safe. The Lord thought his interlocutor was not surprised now. She did not understand the meaning of his words. Prince. He means that Graham is involved in the matter. Carson said that he had no idea how she knew, but if she was helping the Lord, then she was absolutely not on the side of the Count. For a while, Carson by Raymond will hide Lena's existence. Inez doesn't understand. Why do this if she would become evidence of an attempt on the imperial family worth Graham? Carson is not enough. He must certainly catch a bigger fish. Seeing the girl's face, the aristocrat explained everything briefly. He is talking about the person standing behind the Count, Her Majesty the Empress. The girl's eyes widened greatly from what she heard. Carson is aiming at. Perhaps the matter is more complicated than she thought. Noy opened the office door. Is the Lord here? Oh, and Lady Swendon is with him. The prince asked what had happened. The servant apologized for interrupting the conversation, but the main character of the evening was absent for a long time. The Lord asked discontentedly, "Has so much time passed?" Noy, the Lord must hurry up and dance first. The Lord realized that there was nothing he could do, because he was obliged to open the ball first as the owner of the estate. He unexpectedly invited the lady to come with him. She was surprised, but the prince gave the girl his hand and escorted her to the dance. Carson kissed the lady's hand and asked if she would give him the first dance. The aristocrat asked the beauty to take hold of him more comfortably with her hand. She agreed, and they went into the hall full of guests. The Lord did not forget to point out to Noy the mistake in the list and demanded that the Swendon family be included in the list. The servant, horrified, began to enter the family. His thought, maybe the Lord would find the mistress faster with such success. Soon they will enter the hall with the guests. The lady wonders if everyone will be looking at them. Carson smiled. The lady is noticeably nervous. He thought before that she is calm in any situation. Inez explained her nervousness. It is her first time at a big ball. The prince noted that his companion had one very sweet side. The girl was very curious. What is it? Inez had never gone to balls or danced with anyone other than her father before. Therefore, the Lord is her first real partner. Carson's thoughts. So he's her first in this business. That's unusual to hear. The girl continued. She's 20 years old, but this is her first time dancing at a reception. Sounds strange, right? She told him about her debut at the age of 16, dancing with her father. Since then, Inez has not been to receptions because she did not like Joseph. At 16, the girl thought that she would become the wife of a commoner. Carson thought, 4 years have passed, and it is difficult for her to forget that guy. The Lord asked why the lady had changed her mind and come to the ball. She did not have time to answer. They entered the hall with the guests. They immediately noticed the beautiful couple. People were discussing their appearance, and some ladies were wondering who was next to the prince. He suggested that they talk to his companion another time. Joseph and his red-haired friend showed up. Inez wondered how her fiancé felt now. Did she still seem a fool who was at a loss at his words? As she walked down the steps, the lady told Carson that she danced badly and hoped not to step on his feet. The Lord graciously allowed his companion to step on his feet as much as she wanted. The aristocrat asked if his lady could swim. Inez answered negatively. She did not understand the question. The prince had the impression that they had accidentally gotten into the same boat and the girl might fall out of it. Carson asked the girl not to worry because he was a good swimmer. They whirled in a bright dance. Inez understood, even though she was inexperienced, but following a guy in a dance was so natural. The Lord thought, if his lady went to balls more often, gentlemen would kill for her. Everyone in the hall looked at them with great admiration. Carson asked if everything was okay with Inez now. She didn't understand the question from her partner. The aristocrat immediately answered, 4 years is a long time. Doesn't she love that man? The girl didn't understand, but at that moment the song ended. Inez said, No, Lord. The current one is already with Joseph. The prince suggested that the next song be Ode to the Goddess of Victory. The musicians began to play, and Carson again invited his lady to dance. The prince is sure that she needs his great support today, not consolation. And Inez danced and thought about the world, which is so angry and unpleasant to her. But the prince, like that time, saves her. There was a master and a servant in the study. Noy was sure the ball had gone well. Carson wanted him to find out something quietly. He wanted information about the financial situation of Viscount Swendon. Noy. The master wants about the size of the dowry? Never. The Lord remembered the words of the Count's daughter about the prince's intuition for money and that it would ruin their plan. Carson said that if Svendon went over to Landhill, they would all be swallowed up by Razonia. Noy thinks this is nonsense because if the Count's daughter is so self-confident, then everything is going well for them. Since they have set their sights on Landhill, they have big plans for Svendon. The Lord has made a plan for the assistant. Noy must find out absolutely all the information, right down to the number of candlesticks in the Swendon mansion. Meanwhile, Inez was riding in a carriage with a maid. When she asked where her father was, she was told that he had urgent business. The maid asked how the lady had enjoyed the ball. Had she danced? Yes, she had. The maid wondered what family the gentleman was from. The answer was, it was the Count. The maid did not believe it. It seemed that Inez was lying. The housekeeper continued to admire the ball. The scene of the joint dance of the mistress and the gentleman resembled a beautiful dream. The lady thought about it, and it really seemed like a dream to her. She could not believe that it would be like this, returning to life. Inez remembered Carson's words about the boat where they were alone. This time she got help from him. The maid proudly declared that she had tried too and found him. The mistress did not understand anything now, what the girl meant. The housekeeper found the portrait of the Lord that the lady had recently asked for. It was difficult, but she would have to wait until it was brought. Inez decided to put it in her Bible later. The questions from the maid continued. She asked if the young lady had danced with the Lord. She did not intend to meet with Joseph anymore. Benoah? No, he won't. The maid said that she didn't consider him a match for the mistress from the very beginning. Shouldn't she take this chance and end it all? Inez thought about these words. Having learned that all the events of the past were planned by Count Graham, she no longer had any need to meet Joseph. If Inez leaves him now, she doesn't know what method he will use in the future. She will have to meet Joseph further in order to find out the exact goal of the villainous count. Joseph, who had appeared out of nowhere, opened the doors and said they hadn't finished speaking. The girl asked why he had appeared here. If it was for a conversation, then fine. She explained to the maid Inez that she would only go out for a short while. The guy reminded that at the ball his fiancée danced with the prince. He was outraged. How could she do this in front of her own fiancé? The lady answered, in that situation, she couldn't do otherwise. According to Inez, the Lord asked for a dance as a thank you for saving his sister. How could she refuse the prince in such a situation? Joseph. But it was wrong the way he looked at the girl. The lady quickly came up with an answer. If Joseph was so angry, he had no right to talk about the Lord like that. With a cry of, "Does it matter now?" Swing the boar's fist flew towards the girl, but she immediately stopped him. The lady noted that this was purely his speculation about the Lord's look or something else. Her feelings for Joseph were unchanged. So what was the problem? He demanded proof. The girl thought about it. Joseph asked to kiss him as a promise so that the goddess of water could testify to their great love. The lady began to laugh. In this way, she could prove her own love? The guy hesitated, and the girl reminded him that she was still his mistress, so he was obliged to shine her high honor. And Joseph showed up in the middle of the road demanding a kiss as proof of love. He was embarrassed. No, that's not it. The man was excited and made a mistake and therefore asks for forgiveness. Inez answered, it seems he realized the mistake. She forgives the culprit, but the guy should not disappoint her anymore. Getting up from his knees, Joseph noticed the girl's handkerchief that had fallen. He was about to return it, but the lady asked him to throw away the dirty accessory. Joseph. But this handkerchief, The carriage drove away from this place with a noise. Inez looked at her departing cavalier and thought, he is holding the handkerchief that she threw away. How interesting it is. And in the office, Noy handed Carson a report with data on the Swendon family's property, which he had previously asked for. According to the information, they have a large wool business. The income from such a business is stable. The servant continued that they were on the same material level as the families of ordinary viscounts, and the mountain range that had become the conditional border between Rizonia and Svendon belonged to the latter. The Lord found what the count needed in the written report. The gentleman asked the assistant if the Swendon family would attend the hunting festival. Noy replied that they intended to attend. Carson, hearing this, was going to talk to him personally. The day of the hunting festival arrived. Lady Swendon stood among the tents, unable to understand where her family was located. Her father had not arrived. He had important issues to resolve, related to his belonging to Landhill. Suddenly her name was called and the girl turned around. It was little Louis. The lady greeted the smiling princess. The delighted girl noted that they had not seen each other for a long time. When asked how life was, the little girl answered positively. The princess learned from her brother about Inez's arrival at the festival, so she wanted to attend the event. Carson came up. The girl greeted him too. The guy also noticed the presence of his beloved sister. The Lord asked if the Viscount himself had arrived. The girl explained that he had stayed at the mansion to sort out matters concerning Landhill. The man asked his daughter to apologize for his absence. Carson thought that he would not be able to talk to the Viscount as he wanted. It was a pity. Louis was calling Inez to go to her tent. The Lord noticed how his sister was thirsty for the company of her guest and called her with them. As they walked, the prince suggested that they all rest while they had time and blew a bugle. The lady was enjoying the sun and the young man next to her, but a woman entered the tent and introduced herself as the Countess. Carson noted how long it had been since they had seen each other. The woman apologized for not being at the banquet and would therefore introduce the host to a member of her family. A young man who had recently become a baronet came in, according to him. His name is Jamarin Winston. The countess said he was constantly pestering her, begging for a meeting with the Lord. The woman called the guy pure and sincere, so she was worried about how he would survive in a terrible world. Inez stood up in fear so that her chair fell over. She remembered how this same man had told her in prison that the more she resisted, the more it would excite her. The Lord looked at the unfortunate girl with fear. She thought that she had finally freed herself from the martyr. Once he had promised to pursue the unfortunate girl even in hell. The baronet was surprised and asked himself what was wrong with the lady. Inez, in great horror, hid behind Carson, who declared that he could not introduce himself now and demanded that the young man and the countess leave the tent. Having given orders to Noy to take care of Louis, the Lord began to calm the lady. Inez thought that she had nothing to fear yet, since the current Jamarin did not know her. The prince tried to bring her to order, but she was barely breathing. Finally, the lady came to her senses and thanked her savior. Carson didn't understand in what order, if she was shaking all over. Rejecting the call to call a doctor, the girl asked the Lord not to leave. She did not want to be alone. She was afraid that Jamarin would find her. The lady's thoughts. What is she doing? She understands that Jamarin will not do anything to her. She needs to find out the purpose of this man's visit. The prince offered his companion water for peace of mind. The victim straightened her shirt and took hold of the cup from the Lord, but dropped it and collapsed. The aristocrat noticed that she would fall if she stood up with such weakened legs. The girl admitted that she did not expect her own fall. She stood up and sat down on the bed next to the prince. Inez apologized to him because it was her fault that his clothes got wet. She took hold of his shirt. The prince looked at the girl. The size was too big, but it could be tidied up a bit. The girl wanted it herself, but her companion took on the job, jokingly explaining that she often caused him trouble. The Lord asked the lady to listen to him. Soon after he left, a loud bugle would sound. When she heard the sound, she should count to 200 and go outside. By that time, all the men would be out hunting. In this regard, Carson is sure that the lady will not be bothered by strangers' glances. The girl remained to wait. Hearing the horn, she remembered her friend's words. But Jamarin is not dressed in a hunting suit. He might not leave with the others. Inez realized that she was risking a run-in with him, but she went out. Louis saw her there. The lady asked if the princess was scared. No, but she was worried about Lady Swendon. Touched by this, she thanked him for his concern. The girl suggested that the princess go and look at the rabbits, and she happily agreed. On the platform where they came, there were women, among whom was one who resembled Charlotte. Inez recalled how Charlotte woke her up in prison and offered her a piece of bread. The prisoner was embarrassed because it was her friend's portion. Charlotte had heard that Inez could not eat because of the bullying of the evil Jamarin. The unfortunate woman thanked her cellmate for her care. When she woke up, Inez thought that she had never expected to see Charlotte again. She approached the girl and introduced herself. She smiled and gave her name. The girl apologized, noting that she was not a local, so she did not recognize the lady who came. She is Charlotte Dropinua. She explained the origin of her unusual surname by the presence of a foreign husband. The lady immediately thought, Charlotte's husband. This man lived in Landhill and died at the hands of his wife. For this crime, she later ended up in Romfield. Inez wondered out loud how Charlotte ended up here. Charlotte explained that her husband worked on the railway in Rizonia. He was originally supposed to work in the central administration, but he was transferred here. The lady asked why they lived in Landhill. Charlotte said, "Did she mention the fact that she lived in Landhill?" Inez immediately got out of it. There was a hunting festival right there. They sat down on a bench. The new acquaintance told her that she was expecting a child. In the mornings, the woman feels fine, but after lunch, she feels a little heavy. Surprised, Inez congratulated Charlotte on her pregnancy. She continued to talk about her husband's work, which is why they live here. Inez, it's because of the railway. Her friend continued, "When it appears in Landhill, you can go anywhere. Now you can only go from the capital to Sanskria by train." Inez asked the talkative lady if she liked riding trains. "Yes, it's quite romantic." The Viscount's daughter began to say goodbye because she had to look after the princess. The lady asked if the guest would still live in Landhill. Yes, maybe she will be invited somehow. After all, she grew up here and can help in many ways. Charlotte is delighted with the kindness. She missed friends here. Inez said goodbye to her old acquaintance, as it seemed to her. and left. She thought her acquaintance would go to Romfield this time. The girl wants to help her avoid this. The maid said that Louis went into the forest for a rabbit. Inez walked down the path and saw Jameson, smiling, holding the princess's hands, crouching in front of her. She was there in an instant, asking him aggressively what he was doing. The man was confused. Jamarin replied. It seemed to him as if the princess had fallen while chasing a rabbit, and he had only shaken the dirt off her clothes. Inez asked the little one to go along the road. She would soon follow her. When the girl left, the baronet asked why Inez was so afraid of him. Perhaps she knew him? The girl denied it. It was impossible. The guy said, as far as he had heard, her name was Inez. The lady immediately recalled the scenes of abuse from this man in prison. In the background of her memories, Jameson's words about how he heard her name for the first time today sounded. Jamarin didn't understand why he had this strange feeling that they knew each other. The lady was wondering, should she answer? Of course not. The guy noticed that the woman was wearing men's clothes, specifically a lord's. Jamarin approached the girl with a question. She backed away slightly, tripped over a stone, and fell to the ground. She did not understand why the guy did nothing. The baron simply extended his hand and offered to get up. According to him, the girl is from the family of a viscount, so it is very bad if she is seen like that. Inez answered, yes, she is no longer a prisoner of Romfield. Their status is different now. Jamarin for a lady. Nothing that has stepped into the aristocracy. The boy has no right to touch such a lady. She demanded that Jamarin take a step back. Standing up, Inez asked if he was a nobleman. The boy does not understand what she is talking about now. The girl confessed that she had heard that her interlocutor had recently received the title of baronet. Because of this, he had poor manners. Inez said that she had fallen because of Jamarin's unpleasant words. The baron disagrees. He did not push her. Inez replies, even if he did not push her, does he not think it is impolite to approach a person who is frightened by him? The lady wonders why Jamarin moved towards her out of nowhere. The baronet began to get angry at his interlocutor. The girl continued. Her question also concerns the incident with Her Highness the Princess. Was she the first to ask for help? The guy began to fight off such pressure. Jamarin explained his behavior. He simply could not pass by a person in trouble. To this, the girl objected that without their permission, it was impossible to touch members of the imperial family. Inez also reminded that if a person of the opposite sex decided to do such an incident, he would be punished for insulting the royal family. The lady drew attention to the guy's hand. Inez meant that Jamarin might lose that part of his arm altogether. The boy couldn't help but shout that he had a kind heart. The lady retorted, having become an aristocrat, one must control one's heart. Lady Swendon cleverly struck her opponent down, casually noting that recently anyone was becoming a nobleman, and that was just an extra headache. He clenched his fists helplessly in anger. Inez, seeing this, thought he was trying to contain his indignation at hearing such things. Yes, he was the kind of person who was ready to torture you to death if you got on their nerves, especially when Jamarin was obsessed with her. She understood that now in front of her was just a skinny guy with a servile expression. The baron asked not to blame him for nothing. Did everything depend on Inez's decision now? The lady suggested going out and asking the others present in the clearing. While the other men had gone into the forest to hunt, what was Jamarin doing in a place where only girls had gathered? The confused guy remained silent. Inez asked, did he have nothing to say anymore? Or was he simply unable to do so? Now the poor guy had to hope that Louis wouldn't raise an issue about what had happened. Jamarin's answer to his opponent. This is not a question that can be resolved by his silence alone. The girl turned and walked away from him. When she looked back, she did not see her opponent. He retreated too. Inez sat down near a large tree. She thought that in the future, Jamarin would not dare to touch her with a finger. The prince ran towards her, calling his young lady Swendon. She saw him and their eyes met.